Hi, I'm Susan Colley, and welcome to You're Not Alone Surviving Your Child's Disability. There are many agencies in Massachusetts serving children and adults with special needs. It can be extremely confusing. So today we have two agencies here to discuss what they do and how they do it. Representing Department of Developmental Services is Kevin McDonough, Acting Area Director, and Susan Amaral, Children and Family Support Supervisor for the Department of Developmental Services. And speaking on behalf of Department of Public Health is Irene McCall, Community Resource Specialist. Hi everybody and welcome.
Hi,
Susan.
Thank you.
To start out with, I'd like to hear from both of you, or three of you, about what the purpose and function of your agencies are. Kevin, you want to start?
Sure. Well, the Department of Developmental Services, DDS, and for folks who may not be completely familiar with the term, we were previously known as the Department of Mental Retardation before the name was changed several years ago. We serve over 30,000 people in the state with a variety of intellectual disabilities, also people with autism, and provide a wide range of supports from residential services to day services, family support, and other resources.
Okay. Irene?
So I'm with the Children and Youth with Special Health Needs program at DPH, and I specifically work at the Community Support Line, which is a 1-800 number that parents, providers, teachers, anybody really can call with questions, or if parents feel like they need some supports, they can call and speak to one of the community resource specialists, and we do a lot of information and referral with families that might be eligible for certain benefits that they might not be receiving, or we also assess to make sure that they have the necessary public benefits or anything like that they might not be aware of. So and then we assess to make sure if they're eligible for any other services or programs that are through DPH as
Okay.
well.
Why don't we elaborate a little bit and discuss the various services and programs that your agency has.
Okay.
Would you like to speak on
Sure,
that?
I can start, and Susan
And
can probably
Susan
speak to
can.
some of it also. As I said earlier, we have a wide variety of supports that people can potentially receive. There are a variety of services for individuals who are living at home with their families. There are supports for folks who are more independent, may have their own apartment, living alone, so they may have some staff support for a certain number of hours a week to assist them in various areas of their life, all the way up to people who receive 24/7 residential supports in a variety of situations. Shared living is one option where an individual lives with a caregiver. And the older model that we've worked with is the group home model, where a number of individuals live in one setting.
Right.
We also have numerous day and employment options that are out there for people. Everything from individual employment, where a person can have a job in the community and receive a certain amount of support each week to help them be successful. Also people who may go to site-based day programs in the community and either work on skills, spend a lot of time out in the community doing social, recreational activities.
Now, you're discussing mainly adult services.
Those are primarily adult services,
Okay.
yes.
Susan, do you have something to say about
Yes,
the children's services?
we primarily offer adult services, but we do offer services for people who keep their children and adult children at home. And those services are mostly family support, that we help families perhaps with an enhanced model of family support, so somebody can have staffing in their home to maintain their child at home if they need that extra help. For children, oftentimes we offer services such as flexible family support. We have programs with different agencies to come in and work with the family on a child's behavior if there's behavioral issues. We have also a medically complex program for agencies to come in and work with families and help them obtain resources for their children who have medically complex needs.
Okay.
That's generally, we also have some services for autism. Our department has an autism waiver for children aged 3 to 9, and that's a more intensive support model where families have staff in the home to help them perhaps provide ABA services, applied behavior analysis, more behavioral supports in the home.
Okay, Irene, do you have something to say about DPH?
Well, so we basically, our main, population is from birth to age 22 up until they turn 22. So every time we get a phone call, we basically are assessing to make sure that, parents have like Mass Health or SSI benefits, or even PCA services in the home, making sure that certain things are covered like formula and diapers, if they need help with transportation. So it's really a lot of that educating and empowering parents on how to really better advocate and navigate the system. And then we also occasionally, we would do referrals. We have a care coordination program. So for families that are really kind of not connected or not knowledgeable about the services or benefits that they could get, we do an assessment and connect them with a DPH care coordinator who can really sort of walk them through all the steps and or really can connect them better to services in their area.
Now, do you service just people with health issues or, complex health issues?
No, so we would help anybody calling. So we get calls for behavioral/mental health issues, autism, diagnoses, from that to all the way to very complex syndromes and diseases and that children have that, like that they could be eligible for, like Kaylee Mulligan, let's say, which is a Mass Health program for very complex children. So we deal with every type of diagnosis.
Well,
basically.
how would a parent know what agency to go to, and can you have multiple agencies for the same child?
I can speak to DPH and our agency works closely together for some individuals. I am not exactly sure why or how that happens, but anyone can make a referral to DDS services, and a person might have DPH services when they come to us, and that's okay. We work together. We tend not to provide the same type of service, but we're both there as resources.
What about other agencies? I mean, like DMH or...
Absolutely.
So everybody kind of works together?
Yes.
Well, that's the goal. I think there's typically what we would refer to as a lead agency that would sort of have primary responsibility for a person. But we've done a lot of work, as Susan said, with DPH, also with the Mass Rehab Commission, who often assist people with employment or in their home. I think it's a major focus of kind of renewed effort these days in terms of improving and increasing the interagency cooperation. And I think just for us specifically, given the new population that we're serving, people on the autism spectrum, who sometimes have, challenges that are more complex and different than we've dealt with historically. There's been a lot of conversation, and I'm hopeful of a lot happening in that area.
Well, that's great. How do parents know what services they should be getting?
It's pretty challenging. Right, for example, so we have some parents that let's say they have Mass Health, standard or Common Health as a let me go back a little bit. Sometimes some families aren't even aware that they can apply, for certain Mass Health programs, or they'll say, oh, well, I've been denied Mass Health in the past, and so we try to help them in that area. But let's say once they do get the Mass Health coverage, that, they can now get a PCA, like all the other benefits that they might, a lot of times are not aware of.
Okay. Does Mass Health, do parents need to have Mass Health with their child to have your services as well?
Not all of our services. Most of our services, no. The autism waiver, that you have to have Mass Health standard. to get those services, and those are just for children 3 to 9. But most of our services, there's no income criteria, there's no Mass Health, that you have to have Mass Health for most of our programs.
Right.
There are some of our programs for adults, and some programs like you had mentioned, the PCA program, that are not, we don't fund those programs, but you have to have Mass Health to get them.
Okay. Can you have individual insurance, or is that something that you?
You can, and I think as Susan was saying, no one would be denied services if they don't have Mass Health. At the same time, the state has several federal waiver programs that we work through Mass Health, and what the sort of end result of that is that we get reimbursement for some of the service dollars that are spent on individuals. And obviously, the more dollars that come back from the federal government, the more resources we're going to have to serve people moving forward. So I would say Mass Health eligibility isn't a strict requirement, but it's very strongly encouraged, and we'll work with folks to apply, to understand the differences between Mass Health and standard health care insurance.
Okay. If a child with a disability enters early intervention, does that mean that that child automatically gets services throughout his life, or whenever it is deemed necessary or deemed that they don't need services anymore?
No. You can get early intervention, and some people go through early intervention and never need services again. We hope, and we do get many referrals from early intervention to the Department of Developmental Services. I'm sure DMH gets them, DPH gets them also. So it is not an automatic because you got.
So they have to be referred.
Yes.
Okay, and who refers them? The program, or does the parent call you?
It can be anybody. Sometimes we get calls from social workers, from doctors' offices, from a DPH early intervention program, from a DPH worker. We get calls from family who have referred friends that might need the program. So, but generally we have to connect with the family directly to do the application process.
Okay.
And also just to, that early intervention, as soon as they turn 3, as soon as the child turns 3,
Right.
they basically would then help them transition over, into public school or what have you, but those services would end there.
Okay.
And then also with children that have more complex medical issues at that
Right.
age, like the 0 to 3, there's also regional consultation programs, also known as RCPs, that work very closely with the early intervention staff and do a lot of advocacy and helping with the family's needs, some case management. They have regional coordinators throughout the state.
Okay.
So it's good to I always check when we are talking to a family that's involved with EI, and it's a child that's got a lot, more things going on than just the
Right.
typical developmental or speech delays. We always try to make sure they're connected to the RCP program
Okay.
as well.
Who actually makes the judgment call that a child with a disability doesn't need further help?
Are you talking about EI or within our respective agencies?
In all the agencies.
Okay. So for us, and just to sort of play out the scenario, a child turns 3, and just to backtrack, anyone can apply for DDS services at any point in their lives.
Okay.
So we have folks who come our way for the first time who are elderly, we have young kids, we have everybody in between. And so the process for us is there's an application process. Across the state, there are 4 regions that the state is divided up into geographically.
Oh, okay.
For this part of the state, it's the Northeast region, which is up at the Hogan Regional Center in Danvers. Each of the regional offices has an intake and eligibility team. So all requests for new eligibility determinations go through that group.
Okay.
The application gets submitted to them. They will work with the applicant to compile all the necessary information in order to make a determination. they'll go out and meet the person and ultimately make a decision as to whether they're eligible.
Okay. I think we've gone over what specific qualifications are necessary. Do children and adults with disabilities have to carry Medicare? You already answered that. What is the difference? I have a question. What is the difference between DDS covering complex medical needs and DPH covering medical needs? It seems like a
Right.
do-over.
Well, I think it's really more a collaboration and working together. So, for example, if we refer a family to care coordination, a lot of times the family might already be involved with a DDS. I'm not exactly sure of the title, but the ones that work in the medically
Service coordination.
the service coordinators.
Yeah.
So they could work together.
I see.
So there's not really, the care coordinator DPH might help the family, with something else, like maybe like a school issue, or connect them to some of our other programs like Mass Start, or try to get them financial assistance through another program of ours, which is Catastrophic Illness and Children Relief Fund. So maybe they could be working on different areas than the DDS service coordinator, but it pretty much is working together to try to maximize services, I think.
Yeah, we have a little bit different resources, I think, but we tend to complement one another. Not so much, we don't have necessarily the same services, excuse me,
Right.
but we complement each other in terms of, we might be working with a case coordinator and DPH, and they're looking for something specific for the family. They're doing what they can from the DPH point of view, and they're asking for additional services from us to maybe have more behavioral support in the home,
Right.
or what you mentioned, funding. We offer flexible funding to families to help pay for uncovered medical supplies or recreational programs, that kind of thing.
Wow. Okay. Why do some children and adults slip through the cracks, and what can be done about that?
Well, sometimes you have families who will apply and get their eligibility, and then we make contact. We try to make contact with all new families that come through our office as children, and sometimes the families are very stressed and they don't follow through, and we don't go out and have a meeting with them, and we try to keep them in our radar and realize that something's going on and they can't get back to us, but
Right.
that tends to be how people slip through, is if they come
If
to us
they-
and then they don't really want a service right now, and there's a lot of people out there that do want services, so.
How can parents prevent this from happening, though? I mean, just calling
Yep,
Yeah,
just calling
all the
us.
time and making sure that they're heard.
communication
Yeah.
is huge.
And we have, I did want to say, we have a family support center. That's one of the models that we serve people with. And they do mailings, maybe quarterly, and they send out information on clubs and activities that they're offering, that it's funded by us, so they're free of charge at the most part to families. And we try to put families' names on that list so that they are getting email blasts, at least quarterly, so that they know that we're out there and we have services and programs for them.
Well, that's great. I
Right.
hope that people take advantage of that. Does your agency provide any services for the family? I know you touched on that a little bit, but support services for them?
I guess I would answer that in two ways. Technically speaking, no,
Okay.
because our services are for individuals who are eligible for our services. So,
Right.
if someone living at home with their family is the individual that we serve, they're the primary person that we're working with and providing supports to. However, I think certainly indirectly, there can be a great deal of assistance given to families in terms of giving them a break, providing some in-home support. We mentioned a minute ago communication. I think so often just being able to kind of have a conversation with a family member around what's going on, make a few suggestions as to some resources we could look at or some other ways of going about it. So the education piece is really important as well, but I think just the ongoing communication is huge in order to sort of, I think, make a family feel as though they're being heard and involved in what's going on.
Right. Do you know where they can get supports? I mean, real supports like, going and talking to the caseworkers or whatever.
I
Well,
want
that
to say
happens-
there's support groups that
Right.
many of the agencies we contract with offer support groups to families. There may be SIB shops, there may be specific support groups. I know the Autism Support Center that serves our region has a maybe yearly conference on newly diagnosed children with autism to help sort out the kinds of things that people go through when they first get a diagnosis. So a lot of the agencies that we contract with do offer supportive services for families and siblings.
And our staff has a tremendous amount of ongoing contact with family every day. So that's a key piece too. I think forming those relationships with families goes a long way towards helping them feel supported while we're assisting their family member, their loved one.
Now, each person who has a disability, they get a caseworker from each agency, or how does that work?
No. So typically it would be the one care coordinator for the family, and or the same as if we definitely make sure the family has supports in place as well. Like we have a parent-to-parent program that's actually through Family Ties of Massachusetts
Right.
that connects parents to a parent that will, has the child with the same diagnosis. There's also the Pediatric Palliative Care Program, which comes into the home and offers support services for the siblings, for the parents, things like therapy, music therapy, things of that nature. But usually, and kind of going back to, sometimes it's so many different agencies. DDS,
Right.
it could be Mass Commission for the Blind, it could be Commission for Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and so a lot of times too, I find parents can get overwhelmed and confused as to who's who and what role each
Yeah, I
person
mean,
plays.
I myself, just listening to you, I'm
It's a
confused
lot.
myself.
Right.
I
I
think
mean-
maybe this will be helpful. I think at least within our office, when we get a new case, when the information comes to us, we assign a point person. So there is a single point of contact for that individual or family,
Right.
so that they know, and the contact is made, and this is the person, this is who they are, this is their phone number. Some initial conversation will be had. We certainly run the gamut in terms of different situations where there are some that need, require immediate, intervention because it's an emergency or a crisis of some nature.
Right.
Some people apply for DDS services thinking that, well, maybe in the future I might want or need something. So they may not be, immediately requesting supports.
Right.
So in that case, we assign someone, we begin a relationship and a discussion with them. So again, in all cases, there is a person that
Okay, and
individuals
that
and families.
person would refer them to other agencies depending on the services that they need.
Correct.
Exactly. Right.
I see.
Yeah. And it's definitely ongoing,
Yes.
especially at the community support line as well. We give them our direct phone number. We tell them to always call back with any questions, if they're stuck with anything or not sure, who to go to, what agency, so.
Well, do you see a rise in the people you serve, autistic people? Do you serve?
I would say, I don't have the exact figures on that, but I would say we talk to more families with children with on the spectrum than probably any other diagnosis
And
at this point.
what do you place them in homes, or do you have agencies that do that for you?
We don't actually provide any kind of residential services for children under the age of, I guess in our department, 22 at this point, Kevin.
Yeah.
So we, our services are home-based. So we try and support a family so that they can maintain their child at home.
In terms of working with people on the autism spectrum, you know, we have served people with autism for many years, but they've always been people who also meet the intellectual criteria for our eligibility. Just during this calendar year, there's been a sort of an additional eligibility process that's begun to identify people who have autism spectrum disorder, not tied to their intellectual functioning. So we are seeing a number of new people come our way who are on the spectrum, but are, you know, extremely intelligent people, extremely skilled people, and just might have some sort of specific areas of need that we can assist them in. So that's kind of a new area for us, and one that I'm sure we all expect is going to be growing rapidly.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Now, what do you see as the need? Where do you see the need for more services?
I would say for a lot of families, in order to keep their child with a disability at home, there's more need for family support services, more support, people coming into the house as skills trainers or respite workers to help the family get a break sometimes. It's very difficult for a family to not get any help, and so that's when we see children that tend to go residential. If the family doesn't get any support, they live in our area and they don't have family nearby. That tends to be a big stressor for families. So.
Right, I know that it's really difficult to get someone, like for instance, I have 2 daughters who are autistic, and it was very difficult to find somebody who would take care of them for even a couple of hours,
Right.
because especially because there was 2 of them, not just one, and I know those services are definitely needed.
I think so, yes.
Well, thank you very much for coming today,
Thank you.
and I hope you received some clarity regarding these agencies and an insight to others. Feel free to contact our website, ynadisabilitytv.com, for more information. See you next time on You're Not Alone, Surviving Your Child's Disability.